Good evening and welcome. I'm Matt Jacobs, Director of the Bob Graham Center for Public Service. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Okora at Pugh Hall, whether you're joining us in person or remotely for tonight's Women in Leadership Forum. I want to begin by thanking all of our panelists, both here and remotely, for participating in this event tonight. I'll say a little bit more about the event in just a couple minutes. I want to recognize Dean Dave Richardson, Associate Dean Chris McCarty, Associate Dean Tris Travis, Associate Dean Bianca Evans-Donaldson from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Class, the Dean's Office is a wonderful supporter of the Graham Center and all that we do, and so their participation and support for this event is really vital to the event itself and to who we are. I also want to recognize and thank Governor and Mrs. Graham and the Graham family. The attention often falls on former Governor and Senator Graham, but it is vital for us to acknowledge and to celebrate the life of leadership and service that not only Mrs. Graham, but each of their 4 daughters have also lived. Each of them provides a model of service and leadership for our students, and I would argue for all of us as citizens of our locale, our community, our state, and our country. And so I want to begin by acknowledging their model of leadership and service, and especially, as I said, Mrs. Graham and the 4 daughters, who each have played their own vital role in their communities as well. The Women in Leadership Forum is generously supported by Joan Forrest. Joan recently retired as the president and CEO of the Dawson Academy, an international postgraduate educational and clinical research company in the field of dentistry. She also served as president of Prime Performance, a training and consulting firm specializing in developing self-directed teams and facilitative leadership. She's also worked in management for AT&T and United Technologies. Joan is a proud Gator alum, as her pin on her lapel will show and demonstrate. She's a past recipient of the Outstanding Female Leadership Award from the University of Florida and is a member of the university's Hall of Fame. Joan's contributions to the Graham Center not only support the Women in Leadership Forum, but also permit us to support other leadership development opportunities for female students. So things like attending conferences or research opportunities or some of those types of things. It's my pleasure to welcome Joan to say a few words. Joan?
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here. My experience at the University of Florida is something that I'm incredibly proud of and carry with me every day. And I'm thrilled that you all are here in person and those of you that are here remotely, because my success in life certainly was reflective of my academic experience at the University of Florida, but even more so those things that I did outside of the academic arena in terms of leadership and other experiences that I had. So is everybody, well, I can't ask those of you that are on Zoom, but if you're involved in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, I hope that you know about the Beyond 120 program, because Beyond 120 is my life. It was those things beyond my credit hours that launched my career and helped me be successful throughout. I want to congratulate and thank the leaders of this program, Sophia and Anna and Ria. And I also want to, of course, thank our panelists, and most especially Jann Neuhart, who's one of my sorority sisters. We haven't seen each other in person in about 40 years. But again, our experiences at the university have led to great successes, and I know they will for you as well. So I just want to encourage you to find mentors, find opportunities to go beyond your academic experience. One of my favorite quotes is from Soren Kierkegaard, and it's, "Life is best learned backwards, but unfortunately lived forwards." So find mentors, people that have gone before you that we can reflect on our backwards life and share those things with you that you can then apply going forward and make your path forward a bit easier. So enjoy this evening. Take every opportunity of experience that you can here at the University of Florida and beyond. And when you're graduated and an alum, do everything you can to give back, because it really will warm your heart to be able to see the success of our university. And those of you that are students here now, make those of us that went here a long time ago look really good, because you are so smart and so incredibly dedicated to what you do. And we appreciate that. Go Gators.
Thank you, Joan. And I want to sort of reiterate her point about Beyond 120. The Graham Center partners with Beyond 120 on a number of different initiatives. And the Beyond 120 program is a fantastic program to help students think about what they do outside of their academic curriculum and how that then helps them live a life after they've completed their academic curriculum and after they've graduated. So internships, other kinds of professional development opportunities, and so on. So it is a wonderful program here that I would encourage all of you to engage in within the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. That is a nice segue into the next point I wanted to make. One of the great things about the Women in Leadership Forum is that it presents another opportunity to learn by doing. It is one of the signature recurring public programs that we support here at the Graham Center every year. Under the guidance of Associate Director Marianne Vernetson, who unfortunately had to leave before the program this evening, a small committee of students organize, plan, and moderate the event. They effectively pull this off. Yes, we have a team here that does all the other stuff here, but they pull this off through their efforts. I want to recognize tonight Anna Cavalcante. Where's Anna? Over here. She's actually working and helping pull this off right now. Ria Shah, Ria, I saw you over here, yes. And then Sophia Ethan up here for their excellent work. They've been the drivers of the event this year. And so thank you to each of you for your work on this. As I said, this is a signature event for the center, and we couldn't do it without your interest, your drive, your motivation, and your desire to pull this off, okay? Sophia Ethan will serve as the moderator for tonight's conversation. Sophia is a third-year international studies and political science, double major with minors in European Union studies and Greek studies. She's been involved with the Bob Graham Center actually since hers and the center's infancy. She knows I'm going to do this. I cleared this with her. I'm not going to do what I could do, though. So we actually have a photo of a young 8-year-old Sophia Ethan who happened to find herself on an airplane with Governor and Mrs. Graham. We have the photo of their arrival in Washington, D.C., of little 8-year-old Sophia standing between Bob and Adele Graham. The Grahams have a copy of that photo too, and they're very proud of that and pleased with it. Sophia has been involved with the center after coming to UF. Since her first year, she's a member of our Bob Graham Center Student Fellows. She actually currently serves as a student assistant in the center as well, working with me on some of our research and special project initiatives. And it's a real pleasure to have her moderating tonight's event. Sophia?
Oh man, what's an introduction without a little bit of embarrassment? Am I right? Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Ethan. Like Dr. Jacobs said, I'm a student assistant here and also one of the co-chairs for the event tonight for the Women in Leadership Forum. I'm incredibly thankful to have all of you here to celebrate this event with our wonderful panelists here joining both in person and on Zoom. Hi, Jann. Just wanted to say hello. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I have a couple thank yous that I'd like to give before we go ahead and get started. First, it's to my co-chair, Anna, who is working the tech for tonight. I couldn't have done this event without you, as well as our committee chair, Ria Shah, who we brought in this year as one of the younger students who will eventually carry on the legacy of this forum when she comes and hopefully stands in front of you next year. But I wanted to also say thank you to the Bob Graham Center for Public Service staff, Dr. Jacobs, who I work directly under as a student assistant, as well as Marianne Vernetson, Dorothy Zimmerman, Leah Honecker. They've all been really essential in helping myself, Anna, and Ria make this event a reality. And I would be remiss without thanking Miss Joan Forrest, who this event is named after. The 2022 Joan Forrest Women in Leadership Forum truly would not have been possible. We wouldn't have been able to stand here now with our panelists and this wonderful audience here in person and on Zoom without her support for the center. So thank you, Joan. I want to go ahead. Yes, we can go ahead. We can give applause. Thank you. So before we go ahead and get into the event tonight, I want to give one more special thank you to the Bob Graham Center Student Fellows. This is one of the Fellows' main programs, one of the main programming that we do. We have Madison Gore, the president of the Student Fellows, here with us here tonight. It's one of the programs that I looked forward to when I was applying for the Fellows. It's something that I immediately wanted to get involved when I was accepted to the Fellows, and something I'm very proud to stand here and present to you today. So that's my little promotion for the Fellows as well. So I have a couple of housekeeping matters that I'd like to get into before we start tonight's event. First, I want to note that we are live streaming this event. So if you have to leave at any point during the event, you came a little bit late and you missed the introductions, they're all going to be available on our social media platforms, as well as the Bob Graham Center's YouTube. So you can go ahead and send that to your friends and family if they weren't able to make our event live here tonight. Additionally, for those of you who are tuning in on our webinar Zoom, there is a Q&A feature that's available at the bottom of your screen. Please submit all of your questions for the panelists through that Q&A feature. We'll be able to direct those questions to the panelists in the room here, but just make sure that you're sending them so that Anna can go ahead and receive them. And then additionally, if you are here in the actual room tonight, we're going to be passing around a microphone at the end of the session to make sure we're giving you ample time to pick the brains of our wonderful panelists that we have here this evening. So with that, I want to go ahead and get into introducing our panelists. Starting first with Dr. Deandra Mole. She's the Vice President for Student Life here at the University of Florida. And as a leader in higher education, Dr. Mole oversees over 600 professionals across 25 departments to cultivate rich, engaging experiences for undergraduate, graduate, and professional students. Dr. Mole is also the first African-American female vice president of student life that we're very lucky to have here at the University of Florida. I also am joined here tonight by Olivia Ramos. She's a UF alum, native of Cuba and raised in Miami, where she's joining us from here tonight. She's an entrepreneur, architect, and founder and CEO of DeepBlocks, an artificial intelligence company that uses data to optimize real estate development across 100 cities in the United States of America. And we're also joined tonight by Stephanie Bales. She's a UF alum and the CEO and on the board of trustees at the Cade Museum, which is a museum designed to spark imagination and inspire creativity in the Gainesville community. Before the Cade Museum, Ms. Bales has spent over almost 20 years leading teams and initiatives in domestic and international private sector startup, corporate and nonprofit environments, including the University of Florida Alumni Association Board of Directors. And we're joined here tonight virtually by Ms. Jann Neuhart. She's also a UF alum and the chair and CEO of the Freedom Forum, a nonpartisan nonprofit foundation based in Washington, D.C., dedicated to fostering First Amendment freedoms for all. Ms. Neuhart serves on several boards of nonprofit, corporate, and community organizations, including the National Constitution Center and the Fallen Journalist Memorial Foundation. Please give a warm welcome and round of applause for our panelists here tonight. We're incredibly lucky to stand here right now and sit, in your case, here in Pew Hall and hear from these amazing women. So I want to go ahead and jump right into the questioning. So first of all, we want to start with sort of an icebreaker, a general piece of information for our students, and I want to direct this to all four of you. So for my first question is, what general advice or tools and skills do you have for young women who are beginning their careers? We can start with Dr. Mole first. Yeah, you can press the button. Yep. Green
That's
is
why
on.
green means go, right? Okay. So thank you again for the invitation to be here this evening. When I think about general advice that I would give to young women who are navigating places and spaces, there are many times when you'll be the first. There'll be many times when you'll be one of only in the room. And I will say, hold your space there, making sure that you feel confident that it's just funny because, you know, I don't say this just out of the blue, but I was sitting with Waverly. Waverly is a 13-year-old student here in Gainesville. And I was listening to the way that she just held her space when we were talking. 13, I never would have been that eloquent. Let's be clear. But there's something about presence of a woman. We have to make sure that we're appearing confident in spaces because there are times where people will challenge you based upon various pieces that they bring into a space. I would also say always walking in knowing that you have to fight with the strategy. When you walk into a space, always think to begin conversations with the end in mind. And so that's a part of the strategic frame that I use as well. And just knowing when I'm in a space, it's because I'm meant to be there. Having struggled with imposterism for quite some time, I actually just wrote a chapter for a text on what that means when you don't realize the fact that you're in a space because you're meant to be there. But imposterism will creep in. And so making sure that I understand why I'm there, what my purpose is as I'm navigating that, and then just feeling comfortable holding my space and recognizing I have work to do, because I may be the first, but it's my intention to not be the last person who holds that room or holds a space in general.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Moll. We'll move to Ms. Ramos.
Yes. Well, from experience, I was one of the selected members of the DARPA Innovation House, and there were 6 teams, 5 to 6 people per team. I was the only woman in that program, and there was that feeling that I didn't belong there. But I think trusting that if I'm there or I'm doing something, and that happens also as the CEO of a tech company. I've had several investors say, why don't we get a new CEO so you can focus on the product? I know this guy who's going to be like really great at it. And that's okay. I think having the trust that what you're doing is what you're meant to be doing, which is, kind of piggybacking on what you said, is really important. And that what you're doing is your passion. And if it's your passion, make sure you know every single little detail about it. Because when you do that, then like if you're able to communicate about what you do and why you're there, then there's no reason for you not to be there or feel like you shouldn't be there. So I think knowledge, trust, and hard-headed perseverance in your passion. I think that's worked for me.
Great. And Ms. Bales?
I don't know how to follow all of that, but I started out in social work and realized very early on that it wasn't, I couldn't be on the front lines. My heart was a little too soft. So then I went into this corporate environment. I spent almost 15 years in a corporate environment surrounded by men. I moved up very quickly, but was often the only female sitting in a room and often the youngest person sitting in the room. And so very early on, I had to learn how to own my space, how to be confident in what I was tasked to speak with or speak about. And I also had to learn how to be adaptable. I found that in different environments, people operate differently. There are some men, some women who will just assume based upon your look, your presentation, they'll just assume a whole world about you. And you have to be adaptable. You have to learn how to navigate and communicate with different perspectives. Does that make sense? So for me, I think it is adaptability, communication, knowledge is very important, passion, grit, persistence, but confidence, being able almost sometimes to fake it until it becomes who you are. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. And then Jann, we'll hear from you on Zoom.
Well, first of all, I wish I were there. I'm so happy to be participating tonight, but boy, do I wish I were in Gainesville and look forward to when I can be there again. I think I echo what everyone else has said. I guess I would say the greatest advice I have is believe in yourself, number one, the confidence and, try not to give into imposter syndrome, but also embrace criticism. And I mean that in a way that you don't let it tear you down, you let it build you up. And so sometimes critics will just be wrong. And even if they're wrong, if you use that criticism to examine yourself, examine your work, and your conclusion is that you're right, then I think self-examination is always good, right? And maybe you weren't right, but if you weren't, we all learn constantly, right? Till the day we die, we're learning. And so learn a little bit from critics rather than letting them tear you down. Say, if somebody criticizes what you did, say thank you, because next time you're not going to do it again and you're going to be stronger. And, a really good example is when I started practicing law, I had this, English degree from University of Florida and a law degree from Vanderbilt. And I just thought, I could light the world on fire. And the first assignment I did for a partner, I got back and it was more red ink than, text. And I was devastated. And so as he was going over the work with me, he asked, what's wrong? And I said, I tried so hard and I thought this was really good. And he said, if you didn't have red ink on this, if you did this perfectly, you'd be a partner right now. And you're not, you're a junior associate. So learn from it. And I really took that to heart. And as time went on, there was less red ink. But I always, to this day, welcome edits, welcome the red ink, because I'm going to learn something from it each and every time. But I don't let it get me down. And some critics are there to build you up and really there to be helpful like he was, and others aren't. And so I would just say, number one, believe in yourself. Don't let criticism get you down, but use it to your advantage and learn from it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jann. And that actually leads us right into our next question, talking about what would you consider to be a pivotal moment in your leadership journey? How did it impact you? How did it affect your journey to become the leader that you are today? And we can go ahead and we can start with Ms. Ramos.
I think for me, and it kind of carries over from the last question, is I try to see everyone as one, like a human being. Like I try not to see the differences between myself and like a male CEO or, you know, an older CEO or, you know, more experienced. Or like, so I feel like putting myself on a playing field and starting from there, when I actually got that in my mind, whether it was because of like some kind of spiritual belief or some kind of spiritual growth, that I truly believe that everyone is the same on some level. That helped me a lot in terms of my confidence as a leader. And then treating everyone the same because of that understanding has helped me a lot as a leader. So for example, the interns in my company have the same say as the C-level. And in the core team, you know, the interns come and go, but the core team all makes the same salary. So including myself. So putting these things that everyone feels equal, everyone has a voice, because I truly believe that everyone is equal, I think that really is helpful as a leader, and for everyone to respect you, and for you to get that kind of equal respect across the team is really important.
Most definitely. That's a really important value in a company for sure. Ms. Bales, do you have any input on that as well?
Yeah, I'm going to come at this at a little bit of a different, well, it's a different angle. My pivotal moment, I was working for Special Olympics International in Washington, D.C., and was responsible for our very first global planning meeting that was on 9/11. And that morning, we still had people flying in from the UAE and from China coming into DC when the planes hit the Twin Towers. And I was a young leader at the time. I was a senior director working directly with the executive team. And this was my meeting. Like today is your meeting. This was my meeting. And that was the day I learned the full weight and responsibility of leadership. We had, you know, thousands of employees around the world. And that was the day I had to learn how to put the organization first. We had to make sure our employees were taken care of. We had to make sure the people in the air were taken care of. And that was a real growing experience. And so, you know, being a leader is a lot of things. There are a lot of soft skills that are associated with being a leader. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for the people that work with you and lead beside you. And the weight of that you can't take lightly. And I'm sure you all have felt that responsibility before. It was just that was the day that really hit home for me.
Yeah. Very impactful. Ms. Neuhart, do you have anything to add as well?
Well, I had a situation when I was a young lawyer involved in a national litigation, and we had to travel all over the country and just scramble and do document production. And so I was, I think, a second-year associate, and I was sent to Chicago. And a law firm we were working with there was assigned to help my Los Angeles law firm. And we had to go into a warehouse and do document production. And so I got to the Chicago law firm, and they were just lending anyone who had time and availability. partners, senior partners, other associates, everyone was senior to me. And, I expected them to be in charge. I was there for representing our firm, but, it was our case and they were helping us. And so, they all looked at me in this room and said, okay, what do you want us to do? And I didn't expect it. I expected the partners to be in charge because that's the way it worked in a law firm. And, I called my LA firm and said, what do you want me to do? And they said, look, you're the expert in this case and what you need done at this warehouse. They may be senior partners. They may know a lot more than you do about tax law or whatever it is, but this is on you. And so it's your job to tell them what they need to do and to be their leader. And so the partner gave me the confidence to do that. It surprised me. It was hard, but I realized that I did have expertise in this particular area that they didn't, and they just wanted me to be their leader and tell them what to do. And so it was, I learned early on that sometimes you may be the most junior person in the room, but about that specific thing, you may be the expert. And you should never feel that because of your age or experience or seniority within something, that you're not the most important person there that can help these other people.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Mole.
And I will actually tag on to that because when I think about the most pivotal moment that I have had yet in my career was when I became Dean of Students, and just remembering the moment that position was offered to me, an assistant vice president. I sat there, I was meeting with HR and my vice president at that time, and they said, we really would love for you to take this position. Here are all the reasons why. You know what I did? I cried. Let me explain. So I cried because I knew in that moment that I was walking into a space where I mentioned imposter syndrome before. I knew that I was younger. I was the youngest person in that role. I was the first African-American to hold that role. And it was a generational gap. I was the youngest person. I've always been the youngest person at a table in leadership. So that's been my journey. But I also knew that was a moment I had to grow up because I knew that there were going to be people who expected me to know what I was doing and what I was talking about. And that was a time I wasn't going to get to grow into a role. I was going to have to go into a role. Whereas previously, I've been given far more grace to make decisions as I walked. And so when I went into that space, I remember one of the women who was there was very upset that I was there because she felt like I hadn't paid my dues the way she had. I never will understand why everyone thinks everyone's journey has to look the same. We're brought into space because our talents look different. That's what makes us a good team. On a relay, not everyone runs the same split. You're there to run your leg of the race. And I was firmly believe that throughout my life. But I remember her saying to me, you don't know everything in this space. And so while you're here, you need to learn. I said, well, you don't either. That's why I'm here. And I remember saying that because I was a part of a different generation that was able to interact and engage with students in the way that the university was missing. That's why I was asked to move into that role. And today that still plays a lot in my journey. I'm still the youngest person in the room. I'm still the one that perhaps there are times when my view is different because I'm expected to figure out how we navigate a whole host of student issues. And I love it. I would not change my job as a student affairs practitioner scholar any day on this earth. I love what I do. And so just being able to navigate that, but also to learn along the way that there were times I over talked early on because I had to let you know I knew something, right? I would read and I would read and I would read because to the point made earlier, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss something or I didn't want you to think I didn't know something. What I learned early on though also is that there's a difference between having something to say and having to say something. I learned when I had to say something. And so realizing that was a skill that for me, I very openly talk about my journey because it's not perfect, right? I want you all to know there are times where you will stumble, but you will not fall. There will be people there that if you're in a good space that will be there to help you to learn as you move forward. So the pivotal moment was being promoted and recognizing, oh crap, I have to become a mirror because I'm going to be the first book that some people read about a Black woman in the space, a woman in the space, a young person in the space, a young woman in the space. And so becoming a book that students and professionals and my colleagues wanted to read and learn more about. So for me, that was to this date, still my most pivotal moment.
Thank you so much. I actually have a question. I want to jump off of something that Ms. Ramos said earlier. You mentioned that conversation that you were in with, some investor who was coming in, who was suggesting, a male CEO. And something I wanted to ask you about was, what does the fight for gender equality specifically look like in the artificial intelligence field? Have you seen issues of gender equality factored into the development of AI, or what has your experience been specifically as a woman in a STEM field?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting metrics that everybody talks about is the percentage of VC money that goes to women versus men. So women get 2% of VC money. And I feel very, very fortunate to have VC funding. And I can't speak on their behalf of why this is happening. There could be a lot of reasons. But I think you have to, again, I think the mindset for me is like, I don't try to think about those things. I just try to do my job really well. And I try to trust that, like, we're doing the best we can. We're supposed to be doing this. We're like the underdogs in the prop tech industry. And we're really enjoying what we're doing. I think people who make decisions that have an impact on those numbers in a negative way have their own kind of path and demons to deal with. That is none of my business. So I try to like really stick to, and also it kind of talks about the way we think about competitors. Like, we don't look at our competitors or obsess about competitors. We just do, like, all of the energy is making sure this thing happens, making sure that we're doing the best we can. And if you put all the energy there, that's your best shot. And that's what we're going for.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And I want to talk to Ms. Bales for a second about your work at the Cade Museum. So for those of you who don't know, the Cade Museum is actually located here in Gainesville. It's a great community resource for students they may not know about. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about any initiatives, if any, that you've directed at the Cade Museum that are specifically targeted towards young women in terms of building their innovation and creativity.
Actually, I would like to piggyback a little bit off of what you have said. I mean, at the Cade, we really believe that innovation and an inventive mindset isn't gender specific. And I mean, we try to actually move past those types of environments because we believe everyone has the same capability. So we don't want to reinforce those stereotypes. Now, to be, we also do have girls' STEM classes and such, but we try not to overemphasize that because we want the girls that come into our classrooms and have these experiences to feel that they're not different. We want them to know that they can stand shoulder to shoulder with everyone else. And so while I definitely believe there's a lot of room to be there's a lot of advancement to be made in equal opportunity in the field. We have podcasts, we have Meet the Inventor series, and they're heavily male oriented. So I'm not saying there isn't room to be had and made up, but what we're trying to do is let girls know, let everyone know that they're all equal. They all have the same ability to begin with, that there is no difference between you or me or he or she and the creativity that we have inside and what we're able to do. So that's kind of a roundabout answer, but.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think, women in innovation is such an important topic to make sure that they're, rising so that everyone's on an equal platform. But I want to talk a little bit more about your own personal experiences in leadership, specifically on the topic of mentorship. So what roles have mentors or mentorship played in your career? And I want to go ahead and start with Jann on Zoom.
Well, I'm the oldest one in this group. And so I will say I started my career at a time when there weren't a lot of women in law. There were no female partners in most of the firms. When I went to Vanderbilt, about 25% of our class, our entering class, was female. So we didn't have equal numbers even in the class, let alone in the law firm. Now, I practiced in LA, so that was certainly a more equal environment than maybe some other firms, more traditional firms in other parts of the country. But it was hard, and there were women in my law school, my entering class at my law firm, still predominantly men. And so I think that the mentors I've had early on in my career were male. And the women that colleagues and that I shared my career with, we were kind of, forging ahead together and learning from each other and supporting each other. I would say the strongest mentor I had throughout my career was my father. And he was also, not just as my father, but a big advocate of promoting women and people of color and equality. And so I grew up from the time I was a small child, just hearing him and seeing what he did in his career to ensure that everyone was treated equally, and certainly that he supported people who traditionally had not been treated equally. And so that's just always been really important to me. And I think probably growing up with that made it easier for me to go into a situation where I felt where I was the only woman. I've been on many boards where I was the first woman on the board. And I was comfortable with that, but I also knew that, if I didn't play my role well, it might be a while before there was another woman on the board. So there's certainly pressure there. But I think what I've tried to do is certainly support people that have come up behind me, and change an environment so that they don't face those same things. And if I serve in an organization, in my organization, or on a board with other women, make sure that if I feel that they're not being treated equally, that I'm an ally to them, and that I speak up for them and I help support them. And I think that's really, really important.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I want to direct that same question about mentorship to Dr. Mull.
Yes. So I will say the one thing I've been very grateful for in my career is mentorship. One of the two mentors that stick out most to me was both vice presidents. One was a white male, one was a Black woman, and both were very pivotal in my career, because one said to me, I'm going to make sure that when you leave here, you have all the skills that you need to be a student life generalist, meaning I could one day become a vice president for student life. And he committed and made sure that I had the skills I needed and the opportunities, and also the adversity. I also believe that adversity introduces you to yourself. So there are certainly things that I learned along the way, like, oh, when I become a vice president, I'm going to do that. But also, that's not going to be my way of how I manage it. I will also say in mentorship, I learned quickly on that as a Black woman, I don't get to be a wallflower. I just can't ever just shrink to the back, because I'm typically the only one in that space. There is so much comfort right now in the fact that I'm here with a group of women right now that for whom I'm looking and I get to nod, because there's so many shared experiences that we have, but that's not typically my experience. And so having a mentor who was an African-American woman that took and poured into me and helped me understand those things that other people could not tell me. There were cultural pieces that I had to learn to navigate, and she certainly allowed me to do that. But knowing that for me, it was very important for her to tell me, always make sure that your narrative is read in your voice. Meaning I didn't have to become someone else. I believe that systems are supposed to be equitable, not equal in all places. I am 5'3", although I have on a 4-inch heel. So I'm lying to you all right now because you can't tell I'm 5'3". But if there's something that's on a shelf that's 7 feet tall, I can't reach that. The same things, there are things that I'm going to need perhaps as a woman that a man may not need. And so making sure that we create systems and structures that support the both and, I think is really, really important, because sometimes we have systems and structures that think they're ready, but they haven't built themselves in ways that make room for me to sit at the table. And so I think that also became very important to me in the mentorship piece. And for me, as I do it myself, making sure I understand what my role is in that space as a mentor, and I would say even a sponsor. It is my job to make sure that I create spaces where it does not become lonely or detrimental for the person who sits in the seat behind me. I always think that if I think about what happens if I'm walking first and I get to a door, what do? I hold it open for the next person coming behind me. And I think in life, in terms of mentorship, that's what mentorship is about. And I'm grateful for those folks who have stepped in, stood in the gap, and served as mentors and allowed me again to grow and to thrive and to be myself and to make sure that my narrative was read in my voice, and ultimately allow me to pour into others so that they know that there are mirrors and you're supposed to be able to look at me and see some parts of yourself, figure out which pieces you need to polish, figure out which pieces you really like, but also to see yourself in ways that allow you to feel comfortable when it's your turn to take that seat.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I want to pass it over to Ms. Ramos to talk about mentorship as well.
Yes, so I've been really lucky with mentors in technology, life mentors, spiritual mentors. And I think it's my job, or like our job, to be open to mentorship. And when we are, like, great advice comes along. So like my AI mentor, he's officially a mentor of the company, said, we're not going to use AI until it's absolutely necessary. But if we can do a product that solves a problem that doesn't need AI, that's what we're going to do first. And as like, I was so hungry to use AI that I needed someone with 40 years of experience in the space to tell me like, no, it's not about AI, it's about solving problems. And if they can be solved more efficiently, we're going to do that. So that was something that changed the way I thought about everything we're doing in the technology. A more spiritual mentor told me, always ask yourself, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me right now? And I think being very specific about when I speak is really important as a leader, and allowing people to have a voice and allowing people to be the voice of the conversation was a really great advice. And then my mom, who's my mentor, she's the most amazing mentor because she's never shown happiness for my accomplishments. And I finally asked her why. And she said, I don't want you to stop when you think you're great. I want you to start from there. And that shifted, like, yes, I love to celebrate the wins, but it's always like, okay, this is a foundation for the next step. And I think bringing that to the team as a leader is really important. And all of those things have come from mentors.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Bales?
So I have three individuals who've made great impact. The first one, she told me once when I went to her to kind of express frustration with this move that we were making in our company. She said, Stephanie, if you're going to go to the CEO with this, you need to not come with emotion, but you need to go with facts and data. And that goes back to that earlier kind of knowledge piece, being comfortable with what you're speaking about. So I always remembered facts and data. So when I would prepare to go in and have any senior level discussion, any discussion, I'd have my points behind me. And then my next mentor, as I was moving up in the ranks, it goes back to, I got really strong about what I knew. And I was so strong in certain environments that I was almost intractable. And that was in my early 30s. And I became very, almost powerful in the room. And I wouldn't take any other perspective but mine. And so my next mentor once handed me a book that said, Lions Don't Need to Roar. And that was the title of the book. And then I took that to heart. And so I had to learn how to kind of step back a little bit. And then my another mentor, and I've had many, I'm sitting here listening to all of these women today and learning so much. Mentors are all around you, but the final one, his name was Dr. John Dow, Black man at Special Olympics International. He was incredible. And he actually became a spiritual guide for me because I had been operating in this realm where I felt that I had control over everything. Because I knew my job and I was good, I could get it done. And he was the one who taught me that my place at the table is actually he taught me my order, right? Where I fit into the world and the worldview. And I think though that was like a progression, and that's how mentors have played a role in my life, but they're invaluable. They help you navigate, they help you grow, they help you be who you're meant to be. And so it's important to be open to listening. And sometimes we're not always open to listening, but I've learned that a little bit.
Great. Thank you all so much. I want to direct a question now to Dr. Mull. So as VP of Student Life, you've clearly had a lot of experience in higher education. And I want to know what you have observed to be the biggest challenge that female students face here at UF.
I would say having the confidence that a lot of our counterparts have. I think a lot of times we defer a lot. And I watch it even as I'm talking with student groups, I'll be speaking with men and women, and I watch the men step forward while the women step back. Hold your ground. And I don't say it in the way of being aggressive, because assertive and aggressive are two totally different things, right? You can figure out what that means to look like, but I watch a lot of times because a lot of times we like to be helpful. Those are some of the things that are key to women. And again, I don't mean that as generalization totally, but I just watch, these are things I've observed from my own experiences. Women tend to want to be helpers in many ways. And I think whereas I've noticed even observing environments here, I watch the women do that a lot. we'll step back and wait until the males in the room have their say, and then we'll walk up and introduce ourselves in spaces. So hold your space. It's okay. Walk up, shake hands, be fine doing that. You don't have to let someone else take the space from you. And again, it's not about being aggressive. It's about holding your space. I would also say knowing that you're being confident is a very good thing for you. And confident and conceited are very different. We know that there are ways people show up that they think that they're being one thing, but they're actually being another. But also, and just don't think that everyone in the room has it figured out except for you. I always say to students, people are all like swans. We're all standing gracefully like this. And underneath the water, everyone's doing this. People are really doing things to stay afloat. You're not the only swan in the room. You're amazing. You're a beautiful swan, but you're paddling just like everyone else, and do not think that they have the edge. Sometimes they just walk a little closer to talk to the person they want to speak to, or reach out for that opportunity a bit sooner than you are. So feel okay being that swan that paddles and moves to your destination, because that's what everyone else is doing at the same time.
Great. Thank you so much. And I, want to also direct a question to Jann over here specifically. Well, I didn't mention it in her introduction. I want to note that part of her past work in public service includes working as a press assistant for a Senate minority leader. And I want to ask, was there a difference in your approach or experiences in gender in that specific workplace? We've talked a lot about, women being present in a room, how they can display confidence. Did you find that you had to in any way shape yourself or, present a different version of yourself when you were working and specifically in the Senate?
I didn't. That's an interesting question. I think that, Capitol Hill is a very interesting place. It's about power, who's in power. I worked for Howard Baker, who was minority leader, later became majority leader. And it's when Jimmy Carter was president, and Howard Baker was just so great at reaching across the aisle. And so I learned so much from him about how you, put your differences aside to get things done. And so, working in his office, working with him as a leader, there was certainly, maybe a hierarchy between the junior staffers and, and the members of Congress or the Senate, but gender really didn't play a role there. I don't feel that I had any experiences there that I felt were reflective of the fact that I was female.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you so much. All right, so that concludes my sort of musings that I've wanted to ask our four panelists about. And I do want to open the floor now for questions from our audience, both here and on Zoom. I saw that we have over 40 people that are present on Zoom as well, tuning in. So we can go ahead and we can start passing a microphone around. Is it over here? Oh, perfect. I actually have the microphone. So. All right, you can just raise your hand if you have a question.
Hello, thank you for coming out to speak today. It was very insightful to hear what you all had to say. I know Dr. Mole kind of touched on this about how a lot of women can face like stereotypes in the workplace, like being traditionally more helpful. Like, how do you guys find that women can overcome those stereotypes, and what we can do to kind of show that we don't necessarily always fit into those?
Definitely. Anyone want to take the lead on that question?
I think.
No, go ahead.
We'll have Ms. Ramos go first, and then Jann will have you jump in one moment.
Well, from experience, I think wanting to help makes me a good leader. So I don't want to get rid of anything. I just want to feel like I even say it like that, like I am just as capable, and my qualities as a woman are helpful as a leader. And I have a great relationships with my team. And I think, yeah, I don't, how can I say this? There are other examples of women and men that are leaders and that they lose their humanity in a way. And if being a woman makes me a little bit warmer, as a leader, I think that's okay. And I think that's a strength. So it's not about losing that, it's about using that as a strength. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Ms. Neuhart?
I would absolutely echo that. I think that, maybe back in the 80s or 90s when I was practicing law and starting out, it was you had to be tough and show that, you weren't weak as a woman. And, being compassionate, being caring about other people, maybe being softer sometimes is a strength and it is an asset. And so I think it's really important to show that side. And, as a human being, if somebody needs something, I'm going to help them, and hopefully males are going to do the same thing. And I wouldn't want to feel like I can't do what I would do as a human being because it may reflect on the fact that I'm female, right? And that's why I got up and got someone a cup of coffee or something. On the other hand, if someone treated me as if they expected me to do that because I was a woman, I would also make it clear that, in some way, at some point in time, that I didn't see that as my role. So, and I will say that when as I was the first woman on several boards, I was hesitant to speak up if I felt that terminology was used that was not gender neutral. And when I first became the chair of a board and they kept calling me chairman, I finally thought, you know what? I've reached the point where I can say, I'm not a man. I'm a chair. You can call me chairwoman. But I don't think we should have chairwomen and chairmen. I think we should have chairs, and we're all equal. And it was hard for me to do that because I didn't want to offend anyone or act like, well, I'm the woman here now, but it's important. And so I think that just feeling that you have the voice to speak up when you need to, if you feel that, that you're being cast in a certain light because you're female, I think that's really, really important, and balancing with understanding that it's okay to be female. And there are many qualities that women have that are really, really strong and make the organization a better place and the world a better place. And so embrace that, but at the same time, don't let somebody, typecast you.
Great answer. Yeah. You want to come in, Dr. Mull?
All of that. So essentially, and that's what the point I should have made more eloquently was quite simply that you're not relegated to a secondary position because someone else is in the space. That there's equitable situations. I'm the vice president for student life. It is my job to make sure I understand students and center their humanity. So I never want anyone to divorce that from what I do in my role. I also don't want someone to diminish that as being simply because I'm a woman that I can do this versus they can do that. So I think to the point that was just made, it is a matter of how are we making sure that we both can hold space in this space and do really good work. Because sometimes there are environments where I've watched the conversation or I've said something and then someone else comes and says, and someone's like, oh, I understand that. I just said the same thing. Like literally you'll watch it happen. You're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I actually said that. So I think sometimes those pieces, when you're shifting spaces and not being seen as being in one vein, whereas someone else can be seen in another. But if God took me today and brought me back tomorrow, I want to be a Black woman all over again. I would. There's nothing else on earth I would want to learn how to be except for me. And so I never ever shy away from that, but also understanding that no one gets to reduce me based upon how they see me based on my gender.
Great answer. Ms. Fields, you want to jump in or?
I mean, it's all the same thing, but at the end of the day, it's be yourself. Just be authentic. Don't let people push you into the stereotype. And I think that's what, we're all saying. Just be you, be the best you that you are, and don't be forced into the stereotype. So
great. So we actually have a question from the Zoom audience as well that I want to jump to before we go back to answering questions from the audience. It's for Dr. Mull. And it says, UF is without a doubt a large bureaucratic institution. So without money being an issue, without politics in play, without any of that bureaucratic red tape, what would you accomplish for women at UF if you had the opportunity to tomorrow?
Ooh, whoever asked that, thank you. That's an amazing question. I would make sure that women know that glass ceilings are meant to be shattered. I would make sure that women know that the opportunities that they've seen others get, that they too are qualified for those and competently ready for those, and that they're supposed to sit in those seats. I would make sure that women knew that it's meant to be comfortable. I would also make sure that we had a system that we realized that you really have to understand that there's labor before delivery, making sure that the systems we build are ready for the people that we bring into them. Sometimes we say, oh, it's time for this diversity initiative to happen. There has to be labor before delivery. How have we made sure that it's an inclusive environment? And I mean that across many ways, not UF, generally. And so how do we make sure that when we're saying we want different folks in the room, are we ready for those different folks to be in those spaces? So in the space where we don't have to ask the question about what I would do for women because we're already doing it, we were already making sure that we have the spaces that allow them to engage, transform, and thrive, as we talk about in student life all the time. And that when I walk into a space, women don't see me as a unicorn, because I watch women gravitate naturally because there are so few in the rooms that sometimes and I love it. Like, I love the fact that I get to sit and have conversations with students all day long, but there's something special about the fact that I can look out in the audience and see all these young women who I'm watching just be bright-eyed and really take in what's being shared. And so creating systems where I am not the anomaly and I'm the norm, that would be my goal, to make sure that we have spaces that embrace all of us and really do make sure that we all feel supported and engaged.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. We want to go ahead and open back up to the room.
I'm curious if you have any book, podcast, movie recommendations for emerging women leaders. And this could be for anybody on the panel who wants to jump in.
Yeah, great. Ms. Bales, do you have anything that you would want to add there?
I'm actually just thinking of a quote. It's Ulysses Tennyson, and it's, yet all experience is an arch where through gleams that untraveled world whose margins fade forever when I move. And so to me, we've talked about experience a lot tonight and how important experience is to the development of who we are. So I think it is experience. It's those outside of the classroom experiences that are so important. And find the books that interest you, because in those you'll learn from others' experiences, and if they're what interests you, if they're what is your passion, then you'll learn from that and take that into your own life.
Great. Anyone else have any book, podcast recommendations?
I'll recommend Never Split the Difference.
Great. Any other recommendations or anything like that?
I would say turn on the mic. I would say The Power of Moments. It talks more about the reason why moments are so important throughout your career. But I also say I read it through the lens of my being a senior leader in that space and what it means to make sure you're always building space for different groups to come. And then also with the moments that make life a little bit stronger and gives you more perspective for it. So I would say The Power of Moments.
Great. Jen, do you have anything that you want to add?
Not specifically on books about women leadership, but I read a lot of autobiographies of women leaders. And I just finished Katie Couric's book. And, it just struck me as you listen, I listened to hers because she narrated, and I love listening to audiobooks where the author narrates it. But if you read a book and read about experiences of these people that we sometimes put up on a pedestal, right? And we think they're so successful and they never had these stumbling blocks in their careers. And you learn that they did. And I think in many ways that makes us all realize that that we can overcome that too. It's not that it's hard for us and it was easy for everyone else. So I just think reading a lot of different books about women in leadership, especially those that really lay it all out there in terms of what they struggled with and how they dealt with it. I think it's just really helpful. Listening to these stories tonight is so helpful. Just listening, to other women and how they've approached their career in many formats, whether it's reading a book or listening to a podcast or whatever that is. I think can't get enough of it.
Great. I have a moderator recommendation. The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes is something I read recently. Loved that book. So just wanted to put that out there as well. Do we have any other questions from the room?
Yeah, this is open to any panelist, but I was wondering, as a woman in holding a leadership position, have you ever felt that there is less room for error that you have in order to prove that you belong at that position? And if so, how have you dealt with pressures of perfection?
Yeah. Great question. Ms. Bales?
Going back to spending most of my career in corporate America, I was in this period of time that was a transition from these very patriarchal kind of mores into more contemporary modern thought. But my goodness, there was a span of 10 years where I felt that if I made any mistake, it was going to set me back. And that may be why I was so strong at certain points, because it just felt that that there was less room for error. I do believe things are changing. And I do believe that we are getting to the point where we are finding more and more of an equal footing. And it goes back to presenting yourself with confidence and just being authentically you. But being authentic, being confident.
Ms. Ramos, you want to go ahead and step in?
I think as a leader, it is your role to make room for error. And you do that by allowing others to make mistakes. And a really good rule somebody told me how to do was you always praise in public and you criticize in private. So critique in the company happens one-on-one, and then, praises in public. And that means, everyone will know that if something happens, we'll have a conversation about it and we'll learn about it. And that allows me to make mistakes as well. And so I think as a leader, it's really like, that's up to you how much error space you want to create. And you always want to be able to communicate how you learn from those and how you're going to, like, if you have investors, and I have investors that are looking down my throat all the time in a great way, I'm very grateful for that. You have to let them understand why this error is important and how you're kind of moving with that. And then also, I think something that we've learned in our team is it's about collaboration. I think that, like, touching on this conversation of how do we make university and the world, like, it's less competitive, it's more about collaboration. And when you realize that the more diversity you have in that collaboration, the better the product is, and the more successful the product, and the better is adopted. So, and I look at nature, and a lot of things in nature require a female and a male counterpart, and that's how all of this thing is created, right? So the collaboration between men and women is really important. So, like, seeing that and making that the thing, I think is more important. The fact that we try to, like, it's a little bit self-centered out there, like, I need to succeed, right? And when that happens, then it's easy to fragment everyone around you. So if it's more collaborative, and it is in our company, then we welcome. It's not about men and women, it's about, like, what we do together and what different perspective we bring together that have a better product. And I think that could use more applications.
Great answer. Dr. Mole, you want to step in?
I would say that I recognize that there's more pressure as a woman because a lot of time I'm spending time educating, if it's not just by virtue of being the first X, whatever that means, I'm in that space. And so learning to give others grace, but also not allow that to be in a space where you get to say or act in a way that diminishes who I am in that position as well. And I think that with me, I know that I put more pressure on myself to not make mistakes because I know that I'm the first book that they're reading. I also know that my being there may potentially impact the next person who could. And it shouldn't have to be that way because I don't know many men who feel that way. Again, there may be men who feel that way, but I don't know many who do. And so as a woman and the multiple identities I bring into a space, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself about those mistakes because I'm worried about, if I do this wrong, what does that mean for a shut door for the next person who comes along? And so some of that is the outside world putting it on because they don't know and they don't understand. They haven't read this book. And so they're reading it as we move along. And so they're forming questions. Some of them probably you're like, okay, I don't know why we're still asking that question in the year of our Lord and Savior 2022. But there are certainly things that folks are learning as we go along. But sometimes we need to stop putting the pressure on ourselves. That it also goes back to the imposterism piece. So that notion of wanting to be perfect because you're afraid that someone's going to believe that you or find out that you don't belong. We do belong. That's why we're there. And that's why we have those roles. And I got away from feeling that way. But there are moments where I'm still throughout life like, okay, well, is this the right space? Am I supposed to be here? Not collectively, but there are moments where that certainly crosses my mind. And I don't know that will ever completely go away. But it's not so much the pressure from the outside world. Sometimes it's the pressure I put on myself.
Great answer. Now, Jann, if you want to step in on this question, you're more than welcome to, but I also have one from the chat that's directed to you. So
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add to this question. No? Okay, so I will go ahead and ask, one of our Zoom participants said, first of all, thank you very much to all the panelists. I wanted to ask Ms. Neuhart, since she spoke on her leadership experiences outside of the classroom while she was at UF, if she had one experience that she found was the most formative or helpful for her career aspirations or achievements.
While I was at UF, or to read the question again, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Of course. So your leadership experiences that were outside of the classroom while you were attending UF, if you had one experience during your time at UF that you found was formative or helpful for your career aspirations?
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, Joan and I were sorority sisters, right? So I would say that the experiences I had within the sorority and just the friendships that I made, the other extracurricular activities I did while at Florida. I just have such wonderful memories of University of Florida and lifelong memories that I think were so helpful throughout my career, just in terms of what I learned about interacting with other people. Every job, everything we do, it's how do you get along with others? How do you navigate things? People that are, that are there to help you and people that aren't. I think that's true in every workplace. You will often have, you might have had a professor at University of Florida who's really, really tough on you. And maybe you did the best in that class because they were tough, right? Because they made you try harder. And maybe you had a professor that was tough and just unfair, and you didn't get the grade you wanted and you should have. And sometimes life isn't fair, right? So I think all of those things, all of those lessons I learned there, were just really helpful as I navigated the workplace. And I would just say my advice would be, we all will have colleagues that we work with, bosses that we work for, sometimes that may not be our favorite. And that's part of life. But sometimes you'll be in a situation in a job where it is a toxic work environment, and nobody needs to stay in a place like that. I think it's, in this world in which we live, people should demand that they're treated with respect. And if you are, and that's a lot of the work we do. I mean, we have a program we call the Powershell Project, that is geared towards allyship and making sure, training people to ensure that it's a workplace of integrity. And it grew out of the Me Too movement when it kind of rocked the journalism world. And I think journalism has, typically been an old boys network, and, just tough it up, and, just, it's okay that they treat you like that. It's not okay. It's not okay. And so if you're in a situation where you feel you're not being treated fairly, or it's not a good work environment, go somewhere else. Life is just too short to be treated that way. And I think that being allies with your colleagues is really important. And workplaces can be changed. Even if there's one boss that everyone's afraid of and they think that, no one wants to, you can figure out how to change it. And if it's an organization where you can't change it and you don't have support from HR or, other leadership, then go somewhere else.
Great advice. Thank you. We're going to take one more question from the audience.
So like someone said earlier, it was very lovely and thought-provoking to hear from you all, especially hearing about your various experiences within leadership. So I'm curious to hear what you all think is your own leadership style or strategy, and how you've applied those strategies in your various endeavors.
Great. Anyone want to take that one? Everyone's thinking for a second. Ms. Bales, you want to take it?
I'll start. I tend to be very encouraging. I am I am demanding. I mean, I have a standard, and it's a standard of excellence. And that's what everyone that I've hired on my team, that's why I've hired them, is to be there and to be a strong contributor. And this may not be the right leadership style, but sometimes I have to tell some of the folks that come into my office, I let them know that I believe in them enough for them to make these decisions. But if I have to lead them through that process all the time, then maybe this is not the right place for them, because I've hired them to make decisions. I've given them authority, but I want them to know that they have the ability. So I can be very demanding, but I also encourage. I'll tell you anecdotally, I had one of my senior team members come to me. She was so challenged, and she called me in tears, and she said, "Stephanie, I don't think I can do this. This is too much. I don't think I have the skills to do it." And I told her, I'm like, "You are perfect for this." And it's when it's the hardest that you want to give up, that's when you need to push through. And I was like, I wouldn't have given you this if I didn't believe in you. right? And so, you know, a lot of it is just me. I want to help people be the best that they can be. So encourager, that's what I would say.
Great. Dr. Mull?
I would say that I'm the empowerer. I love to make sure that my team knows that I have high expectations, but I also offer high support. I will always tell my team, I am never in the weeds, but I'm always in the trenches. If there's something that I can help with, if there's a way for me to advocate, because a big part of my job is simply to remove barriers for success. That means for students, and it also means for staff. How can I find ways to make sure that what we need to do to create environments in which you all can thrive, that we also have a team that can do that too. I would also say authentic. I mean what I say and I say what I mean. I really do try to make sure that there's nothing that's left to, I don't want you walking in the room feeling as though I was not clear about what the expectations were or how I could be of support. So making sure that I create an environment where folks know they can make mistakes. Like I'm not that, I never try to be that leader where you feel like a mistake really is something that defines what you're doing in your role. Also to take risks. I think the best thing is if we stay where we are, we really don't move. And so how do we make sure that we're creating environments where ingenuity, innovation, creativity, thoughtfulness really does allow itself to grow? And I will say I'm the leader today that I wasn't 10 years ago, because the experiences that I've had along the way have gotten me to this place, right? I remember starting off as a leader early on, just making sure that I had to know everything that was going on in your area because I'm going to be held accountable. How do I make sure I know everything? No, what I need to know now is what do we need to do to make those things happen? What we need to move out of the way to make sure we're eliminating some of the bureaucracy that was mentioned earlier, and how do I make sure that you understand that we're all a part of a team? None of us are in this by ourselves, and so making sure that I create environments where my team knows that's what we are and that's how we're operating, and that's the end goal in mind. Because if not, folks get into spaces where they're on islands, and that's the worst thing you can do for an organization of 25 plus units. You can't have islands. We have to be able to do what we do best for students by working together.
Great, thank you so much for that. Ms. Ramos?
Yes. So I guess if we're picking a word, it would be transparency. Everyone in the team knows what's going on at all times. Everybody knows how much money's in the bank, who's invested, who hasn't invested, what everybody is doing, what their role is. There are no secrets, there's no gossip, and there's no tolerance for self-centeredness or laziness or taking advantage of somebody else. And anytime anyone has come in to disrupt that culture that we've worked really hard to maintain, they're gone immediately. We're building something that doesn't exist. Everybody is doing something they've never done before. So the encouragement and the ability to know that, like, I get it all the time, like, but I've never done that before. I'm like, well, there you go. You'll be the first one. It'll be great. And so, like, we do that to each other. And just, I guess, the culture of the company is 10 times more important than the talent or the skill set. And that creates so much more productivity in the end. And so that's just from experience and what I try to maintain as a leader.
Great, thank you. And to wrap us up, Jann, do you want to go ahead and give your input as well?
Sure. I guess I would say if I had to use a word, it would be I'm a collaborator. And I say that meaning that, I know ultimately as CEO of an organization, I'm ultimately responsible. But I also know that I'm only as good, the organization is only as good, the decisions I can make are only as good as the people around me. And I value and trust every employee we have, no matter seniority, skill set. I think that the best decisions are made with the most diversity of viewpoints. And so often on a lot of our strategic decisions, we will bring in people who are not on the strategy part of our organization. They're in accounting or they're in admin, and they can bring a perspective in that is different than those of us who all day long are thinking about our mission and what the strategy should be. And so I believe that every decision that I have made that's the best decision has been where it's been the greatest diversity of input and voices that I've gotten. Even though I know ultimately I'm going to have to make that decision, it's going to be a better one because of the input I have from my colleagues who I enjoy working with every day. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That I think is a great wrap up for our discussion. So I want to say thank you first to the panelists for such insightful feedback. Thank you so much. We can go ahead and give a round of applause. And I do want to thank you all so much for attending tonight. Special thank you to the Bob Graham Center for Public Service. We have the Bob Graham Center Student Fellows, Miss Joan Forrest in the back of the room who stayed for our discussion tonight, as well as my collaborators on this project, Ria, Anna, and Marianne. I do want to say something, just sort of wrapping up, that I've heard throughout the discussion. First of all, when I asked you about mentorship, not all of you immediately went to label a female mentor in your life. And I think that's really important because this is a program designed about women in leadership. It's led by women, but there are also, regardless of gender, everyone can be a supporter of women in the room. And I think it's really important that as we continue to host this forum, we're continuing to get, regardless of gender, everyone in the room to make sure that we're promoting women and promoting that equitable environment, which I think is really important and a really insightful thing that I gained from this presentation. So thank you all so much for your remarks. I do want to also give a big thank you to Bob and Adele Graham. Like Dr. Jacobs mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, I have had a little bit of a past with them. I met them in an airport in 2009, and my dad forced me to go ahead and take a picture with them. And similarly, in 2016, I actually got to meet the now late Madeleine Albright at an event. And she was actually the first figure in public service that I got to meet. So we're talking about women that are getting in at the forefront, being the first so that there can be a second, third, fourth, fifth that comes after them. As a student in foreign affairs and foreign service, she was that person for me. So I would be remiss if I didn't, mention her impact on my personal journey as a student and sort of reflecting on how it relates to your experiences as well. But I just want to say thank you so much to everyone coming here tonight. I think that we've all learned some really great and valuable experiences from our panelists here. We hope that you will continue to take these pieces of information that you've learned and apply them in your life as students, as faculty, as staff, as supporters of the center, and really just appreciate your support for the center and this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.